Hello everyone, I have returned. I apologize for the delay in getting this video out there, but a bunch of different things came up that kind of delayed me. At one point I was stuck because I didn't have what I felt was an interesting topic to really make a video on. And then last week I was preparing to make a video, but then the McMahon docuseries was getting ready to drop. And I was like, oh, maybe I should hold off until that drops so that I can talk about it. So now I'm stuck this week with probably too many topics to talk about. I want to talk about the return of Saturday Night's Main Event. I want to talk about the McMahon docuseries. We've got Bad Blood. We've got Wrestle Dream. Plenty of stuff to talk about. We also have AEW's new TV deal with Warner. So there is a lot of stuff to discuss. The television landscape of wrestling is appears like it might alter a little bit. But before I get into all of that, let me get started with the McMahon docuseries on Netflix, which I was really excited about because I thought it was going to be juicy, salacious, and just wild and crazy. Honestly, as a wrestling fan who already knew most of the stuff that is talked about in the docuseries, I can truthfully say that it was kind of a waste of time. Nothing new came out as far as the McMahon scandals go. There were no big revelations or interviews that kind of added additional depth to what was going on. Most of the interviews were recorded before the allegations came out, so it was like there was nothing there. And then in regards to the actual content of the docuseries leading up to the allegations, it's basically just the history of the WWE. So there wasn't really a whole heck of a lot going on. There's probably a few sound bites from Vince where he comes across like a jerk and kind of callous. But other than that, there was really nothing to get that excited about with this docuseries. It just feels like it was made to capitalize. Well, they were making it before all the allegations came out, but it feels like it was released strategically to kind of capitalize on kind of the media shitstorm surrounding Vince, but added nothing. No additional information, no additional context, no nothing. So I was disappointed with the docuseries. I felt like it offered very little, especially in the first episode. They go down the line of all the people that were interviewed for this thing, and I saw all these names on there, and I was like, ooh, this could be good. And, Austin's barely in it. Stephanie doesn't say anything that interesting. Paul Heyman has a couple of lines that feel like it's his usual Paul Heyman kind of puff everything up and make it sound grander than it might have been. I don't know. Undertaker has a couple of lines. He said at one point he would take a bullet for Vince, which was recorded in 2021. I wonder how he feels now. Cena's barely in it. Rock's barely in it. It was just kind of the whole thing just felt like a waste of time. The only stuff of any substance that was kind of interesting was the stuff with Shane, and even a lot of that, they were kind of tiptoeing around. Without actually saying what the disagreements between Vince and Shane were. They were still keeping that very guarded, and some of that was interesting because Shane comes across like the only normal person in that family. Linda feels like I don't know. Linda strikes me as odd for putting up with Vince for as long as she has, and Stephanie feels like she's the the yes girl to Vince, and will say agree to almost anything. I say almost, obviously, but say yes to a lot of what Vince wants and things like that. And Shane, it felt like there was more of a story there with what was going on with Shane and Vince, and they didn't really dive into that at all. And most of the scandals that were talked about throughout the course of the docuseries were mostly glossed over and mostly stuff that I already knew anyway. There was that line from Vince about the referee that accused him of rape, where he said, well, statute of limitations was out anyway, which came across as exceptionally callous. I'm going to not defend Vince. I'm going to try and offer additional meaning to what he may have meant to say. I think what Vince was trying to say is that this was a person looking for her 15 minutes of fame and tried to make him look bad over a case where statute of limitations, because she was not seeking any kind of legal criminal action against Vince or anything like that. So she was just trying to get her 15 minutes of fame. I think that's what he was trying to say, which still doesn't sound that good, but it sounded like, the way it was cut, it sounded like, yeah, I raped her, but whatever, statute of limitations, whatever. That's kind of how it came across, but I would like to believe that Vince is a little bit more savvy than that, but then again, he's a lunatic that likes to poop on people, so what do I know? For sexual gratification, he's a weird duck, so who knows? But yeah, I thought the docuseries was kind of misleading, because again, I don't know, I expected something a little bit more groundbreaking and shocking, and as somebody who's watched WWE for most of his life, like, I already knew a majority of the stuff, and there were elements where they started going into things like Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania and things like that, and I'm like, what does that have to do with Vince McMahon? Like, that should be a separate docuseries all its own, like, talking about the big WrestleMania matches. I don't care about that right now. I want to know what's going on with Vince. That's kind of the reason why I'm here. So it just felt like they were going on all these detours and things like that just didn't really add anything. And again, the whole documentary felt like history of the WWE, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it was. I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of how it was originally structured, and then when all the allegations came out, they said, oh, we can make Vince like the central figure of the whole thing. I don't know, but whatever it was, it just kind of felt like it was very uninteresting and kind of a waste of time, unfortunately. And so with that out of the way, what else is there to talk? What do you want to talk about? Well, there's been some developments in both WWE television and AEW television. I guess I'll start with AEW. They've secured a new deal with WB, and based on the press report the press release that I saw, Dynamite and Collision are going to stay on TBS and TNT moving forward, and the part that interested me is that the AEW pay-per-views are going to appear on HBO Max. I still call it HBO Max. It's a better name. But anyway, they're going to appear on that streaming service in addition to other AEW content. That part of it is great news. I think that's fantastic. And I think AEW getting more of a streaming presence, I think, is very good for them, and something that is probably a little overdue. Something they should have been seeking for a while. Now, does this mean Rampage is getting the axe? God, I hope so, because AEW needs to lessen its content. In my humble opinion, I've said that one of the things that really killed interest in AEW, at least for me, and there's a lot of factors that played into it. Obviously, they came out with egg on their face on the whole Punk situation and how that all played out. Cody leaving was the first major brick in the wall that kind of made them look bad. Their first major defeat, I would say, was losing Cody. But another major element that has contributed to kind of the lessening impact of their program is the fact that they got so much programming that it's impossible for any human being to keep up with it, and it forces them. It's like, all right, just put out long matches to eat up all of that time, and it makes the matches uninteresting. So there's a lot of like their shows are not can't miss anymore because there's too many of them, and the matches all look the same after a while. So I think losing Rampage would be very good, but there's also reports that they may be getting a show on Fox called Shockwave. That's a rumor going around. I will reserve judgment until something actually happens, but please don't. And if you're going to do a third show again, and I've talked about this before with the structuring of their shows, part of what made Raw so exciting is that you had to wait for Monday. I'm talking like 97, 98, when Raw was really starting to get good. You had to wait all the way, an entire week till the next Monday to get some kind of a follow-up. And in 98, when they added Sunday Night Heat as kind of the B show, it still worked because you had 6 days in between, and Sunday Night Heat was kind of like, it had a couple of filler matches, and it's kind of like whetting your appetite for the big show the next night on Raw. So that format kind of worked. Then they added SmackDown, and, I've spoken before that SmackDown was one of the first elements where I started to kind of wane in excitement towards WWE. They did it better than WCW did when WCW added Thunder, and it was like, that was when like the whole castle came crumbling down. They handled the 2-show-a-week format better than they did, but it was like, it made the shows like exciting because you go from Raw to SmackDown, you don't have to wait 3 days, and it's like, there's not that building of anticipation. And AEW is just all over the place where it's like, oh, we have our big show on Wednesday, but then we have another show on Friday, and then we have another show on Saturday, and and nobody watches ROH. Okay, who actually watches the weekly Ring of Honor show? I have to know who these people are, because it's like, how many of you are there? Or is it 2 digits, like a double-digit number of people who are actually watching Ring of Honor every week? Because I can't imagine like that many people are that excited about Ring of Honor. But anyway, yeah, so I think adding another show, into AEW's catalog, I think is, they need to be reducing, not adding, in my opinion. So Rampage, losing that, it's like, oh, thank God, bye. You will not be missed. And I also think it's super funny that they created 2 shows for CM Punk, and then the whole Punk thing ended up not working out at all. So it's like, man, what a waste that was. It'd be better if it was just Dynamite. I liked it better when it was just Dynamite, and then they had AEW Dark on YouTube the day before Dynamite. That worked so much better. And it, oh man, I remember when NWA Power was starting up, and that was interesting. And it was like, Tuesday was kind of like B-show wrestling day, where it's like, okay, I can watch some NWA, I can watch some AEW Dark, and it would kind of whet my appetite for the big show the next night on Wednesday night with Dynamite. And that worked so much better, and then now it's just kind of a jumbled mess that's all over the place, and very little in terms of direction or focus. So, and adding more pay-per-views to their calendar hasn't helped either. I liked it a lot better when they were only doing 4 a year. I think that worked much, much better. Because now it's like they're getting to what WCW and WWE have been at times, where it's like, all right, we got to this show, now we got to get to the next show, and everything's just a mad dash to get to the next pay-per-view, and it's exhausting. It is just exhausting. And just not a fan of it. So this whole like Decepticon Shockwave show that they want to add, if they do add it, I hope they don't. I would, if they want to do a show on Fox, personally, my preference would be that it would be God, I don't even know. Like, honestly, I wouldn't mind if we just dropped Collision and just kind of like completely wash away the CM Punk influence over AEW programming, but like maybe just do Shockwave on Tuesdays and Dynamite on Wednesday, so you get like a bang bang type of deal, 2 big shows back to back, and then you wait 5 days for the next one. I think, because that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, where the building of anticipation, a large part of what drives the excitement for a wrestling show, and that you look at when the WWE was at its best, you look at when WCW was at its best, you look at what made those shows so special. Like when I first started watching, you had Saturday Morning Superstars, you had Primetime Wrestling on Mondays, hour-long shows, mostly squash matches, and then you'd have some angles and promos, and then reactions to that. You had All-American Wrestling, which was basically just a recap show. There was Wrestling Challenge, virtually the same format as Superstars, and there was a show called Spotlight, which I never watched, and never really felt like I missed anything by skipping that show. So, but my point is, the content, even though it sounds like there were like a handful of shows, the overall content of like important stuff that happened throughout the week, it didn't feel like that much of a commitment. It didn't feel like it was too cumbersome to keep up with all of that. And because the matches were generally squash matches, whenever a Saturday night's main event would roll around, it would feel like a big deal because, like, oh my God, this is a free pay-per-view almost. And then when an actual pay-per-view would come around, it would feel like a big deal because it's not going to be all squash matches. You're going to get some actual competitive matches between people for an entire card. So it actually, there's something to look forward to. There's something exciting about that. On a basic level. And then, of course, you have to cultivate good stories to make those matches mean something and all of that. But it's a lot harder to cultivate that excitement when you're constantly blowing your load trying to fill up 6 hours of programming every week, or 5 hours. 5 hours for AEW, 6 for WWE. 7 because NXT's 2 hours. So yeah, it's been 7 hours for a long time. Now Raw is going to go to 2 hours for the remainder of its time on USA. Although there's talks that once Raw transitions over to Netflix, SmackDown's going to become a 3-hour show, and I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness. And I have this fear that when they get on Netflix, it's going to be like a 4-hour show every week because they're just not going to, there's no time restrictions. They can do whatever they want. I don't know for sure. But yeah, AEW, congratulations on getting the TV deal. I think that's exciting, but I'm not excited at the prospect of adding, and again, I understand WWE is no longer going to have a presence on Fox. That's a void that you can help fill. TNA did the same thing when WWE left Spike TV. It's like, all right, we'll take it. We'll get one Spike, and helped them to establish an identity for themselves for a few years there. So, yeah, I guess I can't blame them if that's something that Tony Khan is pursuing, but at the same time, they've got so much programming that it's like, it's too much to keep track of, and it's hard to get excited for anything that AEW does because it's just so much programming to keep track of. And all the matches they do look the same, which is a major, major problem. Now, in terms of WWE, I've talked about it, NXT moved to CW. I still haven't watched it. I don't bother with NXT. I almost don't count it as part of WWE programming because it's like, it's easily skippable. I've got enough stuff to watch during the week. I don't need the WWE minor leagues on my schedule. I just don't. It's and anything that was interesting and exciting about NXT got killed when they decided to go head to head with Dynamite. That basically killed everything that was made NXT worth watching in the first place, at least for me. It excelled because it was the simple show. It was the simple kind of low key show that was only an hour long. And then it's like, no, we got to go bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm like, oh, God dang it, no. And it just kind of got lost in the shuffle with everything else that's out there. So, so there's that with NXT. I've talked about Raw. I've talked about SmackDown. And now we've gotten confirmation that Saturday night's main event is going to make a return with Jesse Ventura as one of the commentators. Now, I love Saturday night's main event. I am a huge fan of Saturday night's main event. One of my favorite things that I ever did on this channel was when I did the live streams watching Saturday night's main event and the Clash of the Champions and going through every episode of both of those shows. One of my favorite things I ever did, just getting to sit there, watch, and react to all of this stuff. Some of it I'd seen before, some of it I hadn't seen in years, some of it I never saw before. And it really brought back a lot of that old feeling and that excitement I felt when I would watch those shows back when I was a kid. And so I'm a huge, huge fan of Saturday night's main event. When I think of and this is a video I've considered doing, the top 10 wrestling shows that I've watched in my lifetime. It would be like Raw from 97 to 2001, Nitro from 96 to 98, Lucha Underground would probably be on there at some point. At various points, I was big into TNA, so maybe TNA like 05 to 06, TNA Impact. But one of the shows that would definitely be on that list would be Saturday night's main event, which I see as kind of the flagship program of the Hogan era, the rock and wrestling Hogan Hulkamania era of the WWF. And granted, it wasn't a weekly show. It was just a special that they did a few times a year. But again, when most of your programming is filled with promos, squash matches, and not much else, and, the shows are only an hour long, Saturday night's main event rolls around. Here's this 2-hour show with actually competitive matches. I'm like, oh my God, Hogan's defending the title tonight. I would crawl across broken glass to see that because there's an anticipation there. There's something to look forward to. And I think a lot of times we overthink it as far as, generating excitement for a wrestling show. It's not 5-star matches. It's not a ton of violence. It's not a ton of, all the gratuitous things that wrestling is associated with. It's creating anticipation for those things. You make us want to see those things, and then you give it to us, and then you make us want something else. And a lot of time that actual making us wait for things isn't always done well in the modern era. Obviously, WrestleMania 40 is a big example, a big exception to the rule of how building anticipation for something can really make something work well and feel special. But for the most part, there's such a glut of programming that it's hard to get excited for anything. I've talked about it before here, but The first pay-per-view I ever saw was SummerSlam 91, and my brothers and I would sit in front of the TV looking at the pay-per-view commercials for the movies that were going to be playing on the pay-per-view channel just in hopes of seeing the SummerSlam preview that would go along with it. On August so-and-so, 1991, SummerSlam, the match made in heaven and the match made in hell. And we just seeing that commercial drove us nuts. And keep in mind, this is before the days of the internet. This is before streaming. This is before all that. We had to, back in the olden days, you would have to go to a specific channel on cable, the pay-per-view channel, and then your parents would have to call a number and order it, and then they would broadcast it to your house. I can't imagine kids getting that excited over it because they're just given stuff all the time and there's so much content to keep track of. So my overall point is with Saturday Night's Main Event, I should be stoked, right? I love Saturday Night's Main Event. I'm not, because it's just another piece of WWE programming in a sea of WWE programming. Overexposure has been one of the biggest problems in modern wrestling, and it's so funny to me whenever we talk about WCW's history. One of the first things that always comes up is the addition of Thunder and how that devalued the product, and yet you look at what AEW's done, you look at what WWE has done. WWE has done so many things that WCW did back in the day, and they don't get called out for it, but it's kind of wild. But anyway, it's just, and they've already brought back Saturday Night's Main Event. They did it in the 2000s when I did my live streams and watched the 2006 to 2008 episodes. Those were the worst ones. They sucked because it just looked like any other WWE show. Raw is just, red WWE. SmackDown is blue WWE, and I guess Saturday Night's Main Event is going to be. Back then, in 06 to 08, it was white WWE. That's all it was. It's just another version of the same stuff that we watch every week. And it's, when every week you have competitive matches involving the same people, the same angles, and the same stories, what on earth is Saturday Night's Main Event going to offer that sets itself apart from all the other programs? That it's just going to get lost in the shuffle with everything else that's out there, at least in my opinion. Because I know that because it happened the last time that they did this. And it's like, I don't know what the ratings were on the first episode in 2006. I'm sure it probably did well. And then I'm sure it probably went down. Once people sampled it, it was like, it's just the same as every other WWE thing. And that was that. And, they could do something big like have The Rock on there. But at the same time, like, how long can you maintain that? Again, when you have so much programming from week to week, it's going to be near impossible to make those shows exciting. And my personal feedback to AEW and WWE is just cut back on your crap and just try and make me excited for things again. And don't starve me a little bit. Don't overfeed me. And that's my take on that. So yeah, Saturday Night's Main Event, not excited. Addition of a AEW show on Fox, not excited. But we'll see what 2025 brings. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening with AEW and WWE, and we'll see what the new year brings. So, with all of that said, I do want to get these out there. We have 2 pay-per-views coming up. One tomorrow, a WWE pay-per-view, and one next week, I believe. Let me check the date, make sure I've got that right. See, it's hard to get excited for these things. I don't even know when the dates are. Yeah, that'll be next week. Okay, so we've got Bad Blood tomorrow, and then Wrestle Dream next Saturday. So I'm going to do small previews of both shows, give my opinion, or my predictions, and let's go ahead and have some fun with that. So we've got Bad Blood tomorrow. We've got Nia Jax defending the WWE Women's Championship against Bayley. I'm going to pick Nia to win. Retain the title because Naomi screws over Bayley because of their recent disagreements. By the way, the finish of that tag match a few weeks ago was really, really poor because they did the thing where both Bayley and Naomi pinned Nia Jax in a tag match that determined whoever got the pinfall would get the title shot. And I immediately said, because there was this controversy, I'm like, ooh, who's the number one contender? And immediately I said, go back and watch the footage. Who was the legal participant in this tag team match? And that's who won. The other pinfall is invalid if the other girl was not legally entered into the ring. I haven't gone back and looked at the match because I didn't care that much. I just thought that finish was really bad because it's a controversy that has such an easy conclusion that I couldn't believe that nobody thought of it. But anyway, Damian Priest versus Finn Balor. I'm going to pick Damian Priest to win. Not that I care all that much, to be perfectly honest. And then we've got 3 matches that actually have some pretty good storylines heading into them. The final payoff to the Women's World Championship situation, Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley, with Dirty Dom suspended above the ring in a shark cage. I would think that Rhea would win this. I could also see them doing some kind of screwy thing where Dom throws a weapon down from the shark cage that Liv uses to win. But yeah, I think at this point, Rhea's been eating a few losses lately. I think now's the time for her to get her revenge and ultimately get the win. That would be my guess. Then we have a tag team match that they're saying is going to be the main event. Some people are speculating that The Rock is going to return during this match. I don't know. It's Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns versus the Bloodline, Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. I mean, this is interesting, I guess. It's Cody and Roman teaming up together. It's Roman's big return to pay-per-view. It's, so there's some intrigue here. I think it's a potentially exciting match. I still, even with Roman back, I still don't like this new Bloodline. I just don't know what it is. I can't get interested in anything they do. I know, maybe Jacob Fatu should be the leader instead of Solo. I don't know. Like, I just, something about it just isn't connecting with me. I would think that Cody and Roman would win because it's Roman's first match back. I would think they would win. But my personal opinion would be to put the Bloodline over to kind of add to whatever animosity is going on between Roman and the Bloodline and keep that storyline going. If The Rock's going to get involved, that's more reason for the Bloodline to possibly win. But in any case, this could be potentially interesting. We'll have to see how it goes. And then we've got the Hell in a Cell match, which is said to not be closing. It'll be CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, the big burn off to their heated rivalry. I think I don't know. It seems like they've been wanting to involve blood more, so it feels like we're finally going to get a Hell in a Cell match with blood in it, and it's probably, hopefully goes really, really well. And I think the storyline has been, and this feud has been pretty good and pretty exciting. Although I've been pulling more for Drew than Punk, personally. I think Drew McIntyre's been outstanding. Yeah, I think this has potential to be a really, really, really good match and easily the best reason to check out the show. And hey, they're bringing back Bad Blood, and why not have a Hell in a Cell match? And I also praise them for resisting the urge to, like, hey, let's have 3 Hell in a Cell matches on this card. Because you could argue that, like, Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan is a storyline that is worthy of Hell in a Cell. You could argue that, you know, Cody and Roman versus the Bloodline is a story that's possibly worthy of Hell in a Cell. But to me, Hell in a Cell loses a lot of its impact when you have, like, a card that's like half the matches are Hell in a Cell. And I've talked about this many, many times. I never liked the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view concept. Never did. It's like, to me, Hell in a Cell is a match that you do when you absolutely need it for a rivalry that is intense enough to warrant it. And CM Punk and Drew, it warrants Hell in a Cell. It's the only Hell in a Cell match on the card, and thank God for that. I'm going to pick CM Punk to win and put an end to the rivalry for good. So we will see what happens there. But one other thing about Bad Blood, I actually kind of like that they're not doing Gunther versus Sami Zayn right away. The whole point of that storyline is that Gunther keeps saying, no, we're not having a world title match. No, I won't give you a title shot. And of course, people can infer from that he doesn't want to face Sami because Sami beat him at WrestleMania. And there's a storyline going there. And I talked about this a little bit earlier where I said everything is just a mad dash to get to the next pay-per-view. It's like, look, this card has Roman Reigns returning for a tag team match. You've got a Hell in a Cell match. You've got Rhea and Liv's story, which is one of the bigger storylines in WWE programming, coming to a head here. You don't have to rush this thing, especially since the whole point is that Gunther is avoiding Sami Zayn. So, like, it not happening on this pay-per-view actually adds to the story. And, again, build anticipation. You don't have to rush everything to the next card. It's like, are people excited to see Sami Zayn versus Gunther in a world heavyweight title match? Yeah, then okay, then save it for when you need it. Like, you don't have to do it. And I've always disagreed with people that say that, oh, if they're setting it up, it has to happen at the next pay-per-view. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You can wait, especially since, you know, WWE is kind of really adhering to the 3-hour pay-per-view format now. It's like, save it. You don't have to. You don't need it now. It can wait. It's fine. They do one of these a month. You can wait another month for the next match. It's fine. You'll survive. It's not like they're getting left off WrestleMania or something like that. So, yeah, Bad Blood. There's some good stories going on here. It's just hard, again, because of the glut of current wrestling content. It's hard for me to get super excited for an upcoming pay-per-view because all the programming just runs together after a while, and I forget when the pay-per-view dates are. So, but Bad Blood should be a pretty good show. Hopefully it does turn out well. And then next Saturday is AEW Wrestle Dream. I'm looking at the current card. I'm sure more matches will be added to it. But I'm looking at this card right now. This is a pathetic card. This is pathetic. Like, oh my God. Like, this is just a nothing show. Okay. So for the ROH World Television title on the pre-show, the 0 hour pre-show, we've got Atlantis Jr. I don't even know who that is. Again, I don't watch Ring of Honor, taking on Brian Cage. And then on the main card, we've got Darby Allin, who challenged anybody on the AEW roster. I'm like, okay, that's fine, I guess. Mark Briscoe defending the Ring of Honor World title against Chris Jericho. Don't give a crap about any of that. And they're all, okay, 6 matches and only one of them is not a title match. They dropped the FTW title last week, which thank God. It's like they need less belts because this is getting insane. Getting ridiculous. Anyway, we got, for the TNT Championship, we've got Jack Perry versus Shibata. Don't care. We've got Will Ospreay versus Ricochet versus Takeshita in a 3-way for the international title. Don't care. I think they see this as like a building up because they did Ospreay versus Ricochet on the 5-year anniversary show, and that was something that people seemed excited about. The two have history together. It was like, okay, this is, nice, exciting, athletic match and all. But now, whenever you add a third person to the mix, I immediately kind of lose interest because triple threats are inherently less interesting than singles matches, at least to me. That's my personal take on the matter. But, and especially since Takeshita is one of those guys that AEW has just been obsessed with pushing, and I just don't see it. I just do not see it in him, like, at all. He's just a guy. He's just a guy. And I'm not saying he's a bad athlete. I'm not saying he's a terrible worker. I honestly, at this point, I don't care if you're a good worker or not, because it's like, those are a dime a dozen. You have to have some kind of a star quality to you that makes me want to watch you. And Takeshita doesn't have it at all. Like, at all. He's just so bland. Anyway, and then for the AEW World Championship, we've got Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley. The only match on this card that has any kind of intrigue to it because of what happened at the previous pay-per-view, that attempted murder angle that they did. And now Danielson's career is on the line with every match that he has. So it's like, ooh, and they've set up Moxley as essentially the top heel in the company. So it's like, Bryan Danielson, he's going to retire? Is this going to be it? What's going to happen here? I'm going to say they're going to do something to keep the belt on Bryan, but there's going to be some kind of a hot angle at the end that adds a little bit more fuel to the fire of the story. So I think the story's going to continue. I think there's more going on, but Danielson is going to retain. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, this is what happens when you do a pay-per-view every month and you expand your pay-per-view calendar when you don't have the bandwidth to do that. You have a card that's full of uninteresting matches. There's nothing on there that's interesting. Nothing except maybe the main event. It's like, man, that's pathetic. But anyway, so that's Wrestle Dream. We'll see how that goes. And Bad Blood, we'll see how that goes tomorrow. I have another video planned for next week. Hopefully I get around to filming that and we don't run into any more problems. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos. And if you wish to submit questions for the next question and answers video, which should be happening in 2 weeks, go ahead and submit those questions to the email address listed in the description below. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you all later.